Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kati G podcast. I'm Kati Gostaspi, and as you all know by now, the mission of my podcast is for all of us, including myself, through my wonderful guests, to realize that we are great beyond our profession and what we do, and that we can be even greater. And most importantly, how are we going to bring this greatness, the sense of purpose, to the world through a brand, if you want to call it, but through really who we are and why we want to do what we do. And why I do this podcast is for two reasons. One, I really care about humanity deeply and want us all to see that greatness so we can be happier and sleep well at night. And two, you all know this by now, I struggle with my own feelings of being less than, just like everyone else. So some days are good, some days are bad, but we all get through it. And the podcast is one of our tools. So this time, the podcast is with my great guest. I've been so excited to talk to her, Tisha Morris. She is an entertainment lawyer, founder of Morris Entertainment Law. And that's where she practices entertainment law with a really fabulous mission to help diverse voices tell their story for a better world. Wow, that's awesome. Welcome, Tisha. So excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I've been so excited to talk to you because I always love to talk to women lawyers because women lawyers listen to this podcast and that's always their commentary that it's nice to hear from different women lawyers doing different things. And especially for you because you have gone off the career trajectory much like I did and then you went back. So I find that so helpful for us women lawyers to see how others have done it and that it's not always a straight and narrow course. So let's start by you telling us your story and whatever we need to know about you and how that
Okay.
went.
Well, I'll start from graduating from law school. We'll make a very quick trip into the past, and that's only coming. I rarely talk about those years, only because, but my first boss, who is a federal judge, just passed last week, and so those I clerked for him for 3 years, and he was very instrumental to my path. He recognized early on that at my heart I was a writer, and he encouraged me to write and helped me. We co-wrote several law journal articles, and so um, it took me into the path of he was a bankruptcy judge, and so I fell into the field of law of bankruptcy, which is not the most exciting. I mean, it can be if you're doing Chapter 11s, but so he was one of the greatest bankruptcy attorneys, judges that there is or was. But unfortunately, it was not a field that really tugged at my heartstrings. And it was also the time when I began to really start to tap into my own creativity in other fields and starting to understand spirituality and starting to get into the mind-body relationship. I experienced my own kind of illness, diseases, illnesses, nothing too serious, but enough to be like, I'm a healthy person. Why am I having these issues? And starting to understand the mind-body relationship and going down that path, which took me into yoga and energy healing, and eventually, strangely enough, Feng Shui. And I realized I had a gift with working with spaces. And so I took a major pivot into the healing arts. And that really has become the majority of my career in my adulthood. And it was only the last few years when I decided to once again pivot and go back into law in a very, very different way this time. So that's the backstory, the origin story of my career.
Got it. So let me just stop you right there because you say that with such grace and such practicality, let's just call it that. But there's so much to unpack there because I'm sure you know it, you're just being humble. And for all of those listening, you're all going, how did she pivot all those times? And how did she know? For my listeners, you all know my story probably. And, it's painful. My pivots were painful and still are painful. Growth is painful, but it's also extremely empowering. So, how did you decide? Let's start with the first pivot, that you didn't want to be a bankruptcy lawyer. For all the women lawyers or male lawyers that are listening, going, or maybe non lawyers, even frankly, going, I don't want this X, this practice area, this marriage, this whatever. We can apply this outward. How did you know? What were you listening to advice? Were you listening to your internal voice? How did you know that that pivot had to occur, and then the next pivot that you talked about, and the next pivot that you talked about, going into immigration law, really?
Yeah, and each of those pivots were over a few years. It wasn't just a wake up. And I'm not one to jump off a cliff. I'm more of building a bridge and walking across. I'm not a huge risk taker, I think. But
Well,
yeah,
I would
the
say otherwise, but okay.
okay. um,
Taking is about building that bridge. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my bridge was I was a full time lawyer, assistant attorney general of Tennessee, representing Tennessee as a creditor in bankruptcy cases, and I went from that to working with a firm part time, and then I went contract, and then I eventually let it all go and moved to California, where I did not. Where I let my Tennessee license go inactive. So that was over probably a period of 5 years. And so it was a gradual letting go of the law. And as I was letting it go, I was building the new the whole time. So, as I went from full time to part time, my work in the healing arts started to escalate. And I started to build a business around the healing arts and I started writing my first book on feng shui at that time as well. And so it was a gradual letting go and building up at the same time. And that's my method. I mean, some people just need to quit it all and start whatever they're wanting to start from scratch. To me, it needed to be a little bit more gradual.
But for me, and for anyone listening, maybe they're all thinking, well, but what caused you to make this gradual change? Like, was there like a moment in time where you said, bankruptcy, not for me, law, not for me? Like, take us through those moments, those inflection points, reflection points, because I think we all encounter those, but 9 times out of 10, we ignore them because what? Let's see, people probably say, that's impractical. What will others think? What if
Mhm.
it doesn't
Yes.
work out? Right. And it doesn't sound like, I'm glad to know that you weren't a risk taker, but I think all entrepreneurs, frankly, are risk takers. I would say the same thing about myself. But when I step back and look at my life as an entrepreneur, you are a risk taker. So, what were those moments of thought? What were you thinking, and how did that play out internally, so people can kind of develop their own methodology and listen for what
Mhm.
they need to get to their own conclusions?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There were some very important inflection points in it. It was happening. It was early 2000s. And up to that point, I had kind of taken the standard road, law school after college and getting married and moving to the suburbs and doing all those steps that was patterned for me and that were culturally accepted in my area. And, and what happened is I began to, around the same time, I was very unhappy with law. Um, I didn't know if it was law, if it was just the practice sector I was in. Meanwhile, I was, as I mentioned, starting to get into the healing arts and all these kind of alternative worlds. But I also realized I was gay. And so that was a huge inflection point. And that really allowed me to look outside the box in every area of my life. Suddenly, did not have to play by the cultural norms of my family or society, and it opened my eyes. And when I fell in love around that same time, which always helps you make risky choices, and also choices that are really heart centered as well. And so
Yeah.
it was all taking place around the same time, but the execution of it took several years, as far like I mentioned, letting the law go and building up something new. So it was all a big life change. And you're right, it had having the gumption to make those choices and those changes, and what are people going to think. And I went through, I mean, I did go through all of that. I mean, I had a hard time with my family for a while. They loved me being an attorney. They didn't love anything else, any of the new choices I was making. Yeah, it was a major time of my life, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I know. And, for all of you listening, uh, uh, sexuality aside, it's irrelevant in my world. And I hope in everyone who's listening's world, it's just a function of self expression, really, and being able to authentically be who we are as we feel into who we are. And I think that is why the practice of law, just like any other profession, tends to be retractive rather than flourish, because we leave out the emotional value of who we are, and we don't bring that to our clients. At least I didn't used to. And so, my story wasn't exactly the same. I am a heterosexual, but it was an awakening, like, of who am I deep down inside, and why am I doing this for a living, and is there another path? Can I integrate things? Can I bring out multiple facets of who I am, which sounds very much like what you did. It doesn't,
Exactly.
what I'm
Hmm.
hoping everyone's hearing is that it's not one thing or another. But, in law school, while we're trained on the gray areas, we're also very much entrained into our left linear analytical brain that does not see options and choices, right? A plus B equals C. I mean, my undergrad was in accounting and finance. How much more linear can we be? Which is why the first year of law school blew my mind. I was like, I can't do this. All the English majors are like rock stars all of a sudden, and me with my finance degree, this is too weird. So it really must be, I think, a process of discernment of what's going on inside of us. And if it leads to other doors opening, great. And your family sounds like my family. My mother said to me, I don't understand. If you're not a lawyer, what do I tell my friends? My friends, I'm so proud to say my daughter's a lawyer. And, looking back, I was so hurt at that moment, but looking back, like, it made sense. She was being honest, right? As an immigrant, you're not an immigrant, but it's the same kind of a status thing, right?
Yeah.
That people like forget who they are, and they're entrained into my daughter's an ex, or my daughter's not gay. I don't know, like, all sorts of things. People make their realities, which aren't really real and aren't about the humanity of us. So, okay, so then you went from back in entertainment law. So take us through that thought process, or
Yeah, so that was a little less dramatic, of a pivot, but it was around the 2018 or 2016, 17, 18, and the point being the Me Too movement. And by then I'm in California, and I started to kind of hit my own ceiling in with FengShui, and I'd already had 5 books published on the topic, and kind of had said everything I felt like I needed to say, and kind of fulfilled my mission with that work. And I'm really proud of what I did in that sector. And so I kind of felt like it was time to move my skills into to a bigger arena, so to speak. And of course, there's no bigger arena than entertainment. And like I said, the Me Too movement started happening, and obviously women in Hollywood, and all these stories. And I just felt like I could be a champion for women in the entertainment industry, and and reach even more broader audiences. I'm not that I'm never going to stop writing books by any means, but there's no reason I can't help other people get their projects out to the world as well, whether it's books, TV, or film. So it was kind of like the 3.0, we're all in our 3.0 version of ourselves in this 3.0 world. And so it was like 1 plus 2 equals 3, and the first law career plus the me being an author, and now being in the third iteration of that, and reaching more and more people is my hope.
yeah. So for all of you listening, I think the real point of that lesson is that not only do you not have to be wedded to one area of the law, but it sounds to me, Tisha, that it's all about your underlying purpose of service, right? Is that really what we can boil this all down to if we stop and look at it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that you're absolutely right. I would not say like I'm like one of those service oriented people. And yet I think you're right. I think it does drive is the undercurrent that drives everything. And where that service shows up is in an industry that I love. I've the movies have been so profound for me, and how they've, impacted me. And so, there was a reason I moved to California. I just didn't know what it was, um, for a number of years, and now I'm realizing I'm here for a reason in LA, to be a part of this industry.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. It's this notion that if I really want to help a lot of other people, where do we capture audiences that way? Entertainment, movies, the arts, really, books, right?
Yes,
And live audiences. That's why I publicly speak, right? Because I had the thought one day, once I found out I was a good public speaker, I was like, oh, so I could touch a lot more people, one versus many. That's
exactly.
generally the sales orientation. People are like, I can sell to that many. That is not how my thought process went at all. I was like, I could reach more people if I was on a stage. And then I thought, I could reach even more people if I was on a stage with it being broadcast. Like my
Mhm.
mind went like, plummeted into, like, not plummeted, grew into all sorts of areas, because the goal is, how can I serve? Now, look, but if you're listening to this does not mean you have to become Mother Teresa, although, hey, that's not a bad goal at all. And, altruism has its boundaries too. But that's not what Tisha is saying at all. And that's not what I am reiterating at all. It has to be harmonized with who you are. Yet the whole point of life, right, Tisha, is to be of service and to take what you're naturally good at and your gifts, and like you beautifully did, which is why I wanted you on my podcast, like, how do they come together? And how can I thrive and my family thrive from the essence of who I am as a human being, and put it out there and be of service? And when that happens, there's like this beautiful flow, right? The work is not hard. It shouldn't be hard, because it's a natural flow of the energetic process of you creating and the client consuming. And then the audience is beyond that, from the client's audiences consuming and growing, right? And that's the beauty of what you're saying. Am I
That was
correct?
very well stated. You nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it. It just moves and comes through me, so that's a blessing. So now, how would you summarize, what do you want the women lawyers listening in this part of our podcasts to take away? What if you had to boil it down to one, two, three, four main points that you've learned from your life that you think others could learn from? What would they be?
For me, I work very intuitively as far as all of these steps that I took along the way. And I think all women are intuitive. All people are intuitive, but women are just more in tune with their intuition.
Yeah.
and some of the steps I took didn't make sense on paper, even for myself. And I went through a lot of doubts along the way and questioning myself. But um, I've learned to finally, even if it doesn't make sense, to trust myself. Those gut feelings or those whispers that won't go away.
That is so well said. So even if it doesn't make sense on paper, trust yourself. How do you push yourself through that doubt sequence?
I I rarely do that anymore, honestly. But definitely in those first pivots, that first set of pivot when the feng shui was starting to show up, it was something I couldn't get away from. I had an energy healing practice, but then I purchased this home that needed a complete renovation, and as I was renovating it, I noticed correlating aspects taking place within myself, and I begin to understand this, what I call mind, body, home connection that we have with spaces. And so that's what led me to study feng shui. And then people would just ask me about feng shui, or I would mention it, and like I'd want to push my energy healing and the yoga, but everyone wanted to know about feng shui. I could not get away from it. And that's always a sign of what's on your path or what's on your purpose, is
Yeah.
when people ask you about, or ask your advice about things.
So maybe
Yeah.
that's the lesson, right? For the audience, you have to have enough self awareness and be running slow enough and get still enough to listen and to really hear what people are, when the patterns are repeating themselves from people's mouths, right?
Yeah, exactly. And even today, I mean, it's no accident. So property, real estate, and property and homes and spaces have always been a vibration um, that there's a magnetic attraction between me and that. And so I'm still even open now to even working in law that has to do with property. It's being, I stay open to what the resonance of energy is, and because that's the kind of people and clients and that you'll attract. And that when you're in that flow, um, it's life just has more joy, you
Oh,
know.
amen. I sort of think we should end the podcast there, but there's so much more for you to share. But for those of us who are listening and maybe they've never heard of energetic resonance and flow, or maybe they've only heard of flow because it came out of Shonda Rhimes' mouth when she was talking about how she writes, right? And she writes in a state of flow. And I'm not sure she quite explained that to a way that people really grasped it, but they liked the way it sounded. But can you fill us in a little bit on what you mean by energetic resonance and flow? Basic
Well,
101.
another way of thinking of it is throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. um, so I've started this entertainment law practice. I'm just now in my second year of it, even though I've uh, been around it for probably 3 or 4 years total. But as far as actually having more entertainment law, I'm in my second year. And so I'm still finding my way in this, and seeing what type of clients are a resonance to me. And so whether that's from social media or advertising or word of mouth, seeing what comes back. So that's what I mean by throwing spade in the wall and seeing what sticks. And so that I'm still doing that. I mean, I still do that. I will still continue to do that, because we evolve, and therefore who we attract evolves as well as clients. So that's a little more practical approach to energy.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, bringing it back around to attracting those clients. I work with clients like all the time on that. They're like, well, isn't everyone who is a I don't know, who needs bankruptcy work my client? And I'm like, are they really, or should they be somehow aligned to your story and to who you are? Because we don't have enough marketing dollars in the world to throw at all those people, right, to get them
Right.
to generate interest in us, and they shouldn't really. So there's a factor of that, but there's also just energetically owning who we are. And when we show up authentically resonating and exciting who we are, whether we're lawyers or quote unquote energy workers, whatever you want to call it, the right people show up around us because we are attractive to them in a way where they can see that we can be valuable of service to them.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, I mean, I'm still finding my way in that, and perhaps you can help me with that as well, in today's call.
Yes.
But because it takes helpers, it takes people like you to help us find our way through, because it's easy for us to get in our own way, our own limiting beliefs, our own doubts, and so it helps to have someone like you to kind of get us past those things.
Well, thank you. So, is there another lesson, or should we go to that part of podcast, part two? Any
I'm good
other?
with part two if you want. If
All right,
if we
let's go
kind
part.
of
Yeah. So, what is one challenge on your plate? Something that's maybe not keeping you up at night, but that takes up a lot of your energy and pervades your thoughts, your conscious thoughts, and maybe your unconscious mind is also grappling with it. So we can bring it to to clearing. What's going on?
So there's, yeah, the piggybacking on what I was just saying. And it's, I don't know if it's, I mean, partly it's the entertainment field, but it could also just be my limited beliefs about the entertainment field. But there's a, in the entertainment industry, on the business side of things, you have the big agencies, the William Morris, CAA, UTA, and that's where the big talent are signed with, the
Right.
big A-listers and the big writers and directors, and so they're kind of taken, so to speak, by the. And there's also the big law firms that that if you're a big A-lister, then you have to be with one of these law firms. That's just the way it is. And so it leaves boutique firms, smaller, like mid-size and mid-size firms and boutique firms more vying for the people, the pool of talent below the A-listers, which is fine. Sometimes you have to catch them early before they get to be big, and that's fun, finding the diamonds in the rough. Whether it's talent, writers, directors, producers. So sometimes I just kind of and the last thing I'm going to be is scarce, lack-minded. Scarcity is if there's all these entertainment attorneys fighting over this small pool of fish, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. But it's hard to sometimes not go there.
Yeah. So what's the question?
Maybe clarifying who my ideal client is.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that is the big question that I want to answer here. And yet I very well know that it's a process, it's a journey, and it'll evolve. Um, it's part and parcel with what do you define as your natural strengths within the entertainment field, which will set you apart. That's how the brand is developed with the unique selling proposition. What is that story? That's why I ask people stories. I flesh them out with my clients. I make them write it. Write your story. Let's talk about it. Let's do one part healing around your story. It's therapeutic. I'm not a therapist, but everyone says my story review process is therapeutic. And then on the other side, we find out all the brilliant pivot points that make you exceptional to a particular audience based on your life to date. And then out of that story, out of your mouth, not mine, I'm just very good at catching those languaging, is exactly how we want to phrase it. So, for instance, I had a client, immigration lawyer down in Florida. She was Cuban. She had grown up wanting to be a diplomat. That is all she ever wanted to do. And she did not get into Georgetown's school and on that subject. And so she just let that die, but it never died in her heart. So fast forward 30, 40 years, successful immigration lawyer, hates her work. Like, cannot figure out why it feels so blah. Like, making a lot of money, but just missing something in her life. And through that process of writing her story, I said, look, you are serving as that ambassador to the United States for people. You're just doing it in a different way where, frankly, you're making a lot more money and you have a lot more autonomy. I didn't do anything but shed light on that limiting belief from the unconscious mind that had said, someone along the way, when that application came back and said, you do not get into Georgetown, somewhere somebody dropped into our unconscious mind, you did not get in, which means you're not good enough to be an ambassador to this country in one way or another. And yet the unconscious mind routed her through her conscious awareness to immigration law, but she didn't connect the dots, right? Because that's the entrainment problem, right? And so once she realized that, she just embraced that. And then she actually had a really good reason for bringing in those clients. They were finding her. So maybe that's not exactly what you're saying, but they weren't finding her. There was no intentional connection. She was delivering beautiful service, very loving woman. She just was not happy. And so you could tell, right? And so that's the beauty of this story writing. Like you really see it for what it is, and it takes another person's perspective, ideally someone like I've read thousands of stories that I'm going to my grave with. But that's the real answer. It's really about who you are at your core and where to find that audience. So frankly, I look at you and I'm like, I don't see any reason. And I don't understand the entertainment industry as well as you do, but I've had my fair share of, I do a lot of work with musicians because I love music industry, and I don't know why. I used to play the clarinet, but I'm really good at music. Like I can listen to a concert and I can say that needs to go up a key, down a key, do this, do that. I don't know. That's just part of parcel what I do. So I've had a good taste of it. And what I realize is none of that matters if you resonate with those right clients. And so I think what's happening, which happens to a lot of us, whether it's entertainment industry or anything, is you're kind of like you said, shutting that door because I heard it in your voice. You didn't say it, you said the opposite. But I heard you subconsciously say, well, those people are all taken. But you didn't say that the B-listers are not going to grow into that. So that's good. You got that idea. But it feels kind of hard. Like you're like, ugh, like they're small, narrow amount and I have to go after them. So let's make it easy and have people find me. Yeah, let's make it easy, but let's open you up to anyone that would be attracted and would value the wisdom you bring through all this experience, really. And for those who just have to go with AmLaw 50 because they're kind of part of that broken system that says do this, the you're my puppet, we here, you have to go here, then they don't deserve you and they don't need you, right? And there's something so sexy and attractive about being that kind of a person that says, here's who I am and here's what I do. You already do that, but I think now that entertainment law is newer for you, you're kind of like still getting your feet wet. And there's also some kind of a resistance around that because I think it's an intimidating area of practice. I've been around a lot of those lawyers or just people, and it's like, how do I say this without being really inappropriate? Everyone could use a boost in self confidence, and power sometimes substitutes for that, but not very well. So we'll just leave it at that, right? So I think you just show up authentically as yourself. And I think you shine a lot more than most of those people. And you just got to stay fast and firm to that premise that I am truly different, unique, and I don't fit into big law. Maybe you do one day, you decide. Keep your options open and keep looking at those limiting beliefs around what the unconscious mind. I don't know if you're familiar with neurolinguistics programming, NLP.com. Fabulous, fabulous people that really teach us about the unconscious mind versus the conscious mind and how um, the conscious mind feeds into the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind really, if you're connected with your higher self, that fluidity from source, higher consciousness, to your unconscious mind, to your conscious mind, is the easy part of life. So there's some resistance there because otherwise you wouldn't have that question. So does that make any sense? Was that
That
helpful
was
at all?
beautiful. Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. You're so welcome. So, what are your parting thoughts for this lovely audience?
Um, gosh, I'm still taking in what you said. I'm going to steal from you. Actually, what's that phrase? Be yourself because everyone else is taken. Is coming to mind,
Absolutely.
and it's. I
Absolutely.
mean, your advice to me, or the wisdom that came through for me, is applicable for everyone, regardless of what area of law you're in. We all, the more we are ourselves and show up authentically, we're going to attract those people to us. And because I mean, we've all probably taken the client that we like, we didn't listen to our intuition about taking, we took them anyway, and it becomes like a nightmare client.
Let me tell you, I had to write a whole new. I had to have a business lawyer write me a whole new contract with clients as a result of that. And good learning. Yes, totally, totally. Tisha, you're one of those people that what I get is your higher purpose is to allow other people to shine in the limelight.
Mm-hmm.
It's akin to me. I always say I'm the chief of staff to the queen or the king, right? And I'm happy to be of service that way because my job really is to allow other people to shine through
Yes,
whatever avenue. And I sense you're very much aligned there too. So knowing that about yourself and knowing that about myself, that doesn't mean I don't put myself in the limelight, but I always know that if I'm in the limelight, it's in support of others
that's
prospering.
right.
And that always comes back. So that's an unstoppable process in the entertainment industry, in any
Mm-hmm.
industry, right? Like no
Yes.
one can compete with that because there's not a notion of competition. It's a notion of this is my purpose. It's like trying to get that semi truck move. It's barreling down at 140 miles an hour. Like there's no one that's going to be stupid enough to question that, right?
Yeah.
So keep your foot on the gas, keep being of service. Thank you for showing up for us. And if people want to get a hold of you, is there an email, a link that we can put in the show notes for
Yes.
folks?
The easiest is just my website. It's my name, tishamorris.com. Um, so yeah,
Beautiful.
tishamorris.com.
And I bet they can find you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. All my handles are my name, Tisha Morris or Tisha L. Morris, but you can
Beautiful.
definitely link there from my website. So
Fabulous. Well, thank you for your time. I
this
sincerely
has been
appreciate
wonderful. Thank you.
it. I hope everyone listening sees the value in not just having one path, in being open, in being really yourself. I admire Tisha's ability to be strong in the face of change, in the face of not doing it the way everybody else does it, but showing up still for the masses and for the good of the highest power, whatever that means in the world. And so thank you for being you. And I hope everyone else finds their own version of that. You and I are not Tisha. We shouldn't be, but we can always find our path and find our joy and find our contribution and make money. Why not? There's nothing wrong with being abundant and prospering that way too, because then you help more people.
Absolutely.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much, everyone else. This is the end of this podcast, and I will see you on the next podcast episode. Catch you out.